Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everyone's been having a good day today. Nice, relaxed Sunday. Hopefully, it's not too cold where you're at. We're not planning to start tomorrow, so I decided to go ahead and run another Simon game, Blades for Hire. Um, Music today is Barry McCreary's Battlestar Galactica Season 2. And if we make it far enough, Season 3. Um, I don't own the copyright to the music. I'm just playing it for background music. I'm not getting monetized or anything like that. So, hope you enjoy the music. And for now, we are going to have ChatGPT 5.2 this time. Give us a summary of what happened in last time's game. Here we go.
Episode 12 recap. The unwritten path. Last time on Blades for Hire, Simon descended beyond the Hall of Records and into the machinery of reality itself. In the depths of the repository, Simon bonded with the First Ledger, gaining the power to sense erased identities and intervene where the system rewrites lives. There, he confronted an eraser at work on Malvor's name and chose not destruction, but responsibility, stabilizing Malvor's existence and claiming him as a burden he would carry forward. That choice drew Simon into the domain of the archivist, the architect of the system that controls names, records, and erasure. What followed was not a battle of blades, but a duel of wills, a philosophical confrontation over identity, control, mercy, and truth. Simon defined his doctrine. He would guide without overwriting. He would protect those who deserve it. He would influence the story without dominating it. Through that duel, Simon completed his identity, not as an unwritten anomaly, but as something new. He chose Valharan as his constant. He accepted respect for those who shape reality without surrendering to them. And finally, he set his ultimate boundary. Simon will never become a liar. He will always speak the truth, even when it isn't the truth others want to hear. With that declaration, Simon became whole. The archivist named him editor of Mercy and Truth and revealed the real threat behind the erasures. A fractured being known as the revisionist, an identity broken by endless rewrites, now trying to reset the world by erasing it. At the episode's end, Simon stepped into the revisionist's domain, a shattered reality made of half-written stories and broken names. There, the revisionist turned to him and asked the most dangerous question of all. Tell me who I am.
Interesting. Let's move on into episode 13, please. Oh, yeah, I'm playing Simon, who is a teaching level 5 total. He's a 4th level Eldritch Knight and a level 1 rogue.
All right, deep breath, quill down, eyes up. Episode 13 begins exactly where we left off. Simon stands in a place that should not exist. The ground beneath his boots is not stone but parchment, layered and torn, words half scraped away like scars. Sentences trail off mid-thought, names repeat, then overwrite themselves. The sky is a slow drifting smear of ink and light, as if someone tried to erase a sunset and gave up halfway through. Across from Simon stands the revisionist. Not a monster in the usual sense, no claws, no fangs, just a figure stitched together from conflicting drafts of a person. One version is tall, another shorter. Faces slide over each other like reflections in broken glass. Every time it shifts, you catch fragments of different lives, different roles, different failures. Warrior, scribe, child, tyrant. Nobody sticks. Its voice arrives before its mouth moves, like a sentence written ahead of the speaker. Tell me who I am. The First Ledger hums at Simon's side, not urging, not warning, waiting. Valharan is there too, quiet, present, A constant pressure at Simon's back, like a hand resting between the shoulders, not guiding the words, just reminding him that this choice will be his. The archivist's realm is gone now. No throne, no audience, no system to hide behind. This is what happens when an idea collapses in on itself and keeps thinking anyway. The revisionist tilts its head. A dozen eyes blink out of sync. I have been edited so many times that nothing remains, it says. Every correction was justified. Every erasure was necessary. So tell me. The air tightens like a held breath. If Simon answers with authority, he risks becoming what the archivist feared. If he lies, he breaks the one rule that made him whole. If he refuses, the revisionist will keep rewriting until there is nothing left to stop it. This is not a combat turn. This is a declaration. Simon is being asked to define a god that failed. Speak when ready.
You are the keeper of the ultimate truths that affect everyone. You are the holder of fate. That's the closest I can get to it, I think.
The revisionist freezes, not recoils, not attacks. It simply stops, as if the sentence Simon spoke snapped into a place that had been empty for a very long time. The layered faces settle, not into one face, but into alignment, like pages stacked instead of scattered. You are the keeper of the ultimate truths that affect everyone, Simon says. You are the holder of fate. The words do not overwrite the revisionist, they anchor it. The parchment ground beneath you trembles, then stills. Half-written sentences around you stop bleeding ink. A few names, long broken, stop looping, and finally, rest. The revisionist exhales. The sound is like a library door closing after centuries of being propped open. That is, it says slowly, testing the shape of the idea, what I was built to be. For the first time, its voice is singular. I was not meant to reset the world, it continues. I was meant to hold it steady, to remember what mattered when others forgot, to carry the weight so no one else had to. The first ledger flares softly. Not approval, recognition. Valharan tightens just slightly. This was not domination. This was not mercy through erasure. This was truth spoken without varnish. The revisionist looks at Simon now, not as a judge, not as a god, but as a peer who understands the cost. I broke, it admits, because no one ever told me what I was allowed to be when the edits never stopped. The sky above shifts, not erased. Rewritten cleanly, blank parchment, waiting. You did not lie, the revisionist says, and you did not command me. A pause. Tell me this, editor of Mercy and Truth, it says, quieter now. If I am the holder of fate, am I allowed to set it down? The question lands heavier than the first. Episode 13 has crossed its threshold.
If that is what fate calls for, then yes, you are allowed to set it down.
The words land, and for a moment, nothing happens. Then the revisionist does something no version of it has ever done. It lets go. You feel it before you see it. A pressure lifting, like the world quietly admitting it has been clenching its jaw for a very long time. Threads of ink unwind from the revisionist's hands, not torn away, released willingly. Fate does not shatter, it settles. The parchment sky exhales into clarity. I was never meant to carry it forever. The revisionist says, and there is relief in its voice now. Grief too, old, earned grief. I mistook endurance for purpose. The fractured silhouettes peel away one by one. Warrior, tyrant, child, scribe. They do not vanish. They step back, becoming footnotes instead of headlines. What remains is smaller, quieter, real, a person. The first ledger opens on its own, not to a name, to a blank page. Valharan hums low and steady like a bell rung once and allowed to fade naturally. This is not an ascension. This is a correction that does not erase. The revisionist looks at the empty page, then at Simon. So this is what mercy looks like, it says. Not forgiveness, not punishment, permission. The realm responds. The broken names around you stop screaming to be fixed. Some fade into rest, some return to circulation. A few remain unresolved, as they should. Reality is not neat, it is survivable. A presence stirs behind Simon, not the archivist, something older, quieter. The system itself, acknowledging a patch it could never write on its own. A new rule settles into the bones of the world. Fate may be held, fate may be guided, but fate may also be set down. The revisionist steps back from the page. What happens to me? It asks, no, just curiosity. The answer is not demanded. Episode 13 does not end with a cliffhanger. It ends with a handoff. And somewhere, far beyond this place, consequences begin rearranging themselves.
We're not close to ending episode 13 now. Let's continue, please.
Got it. No fade out, no credits, no emotional mic drop yet. We stay in the room. The blank page in the first ledger does not fill itself. That matters. The revisionist waits, but not passively now, not frozen in terror of being wrong. It stands like someone who has just set down a crushing load and suddenly realizes their hands are empty. Unsure what comes next, but no longer compelled to keep squeezing. The system responds in subtler ways. Somewhere distant, a record corrects itself. A name once erased stops flickering. A child who should not have been forgotten is remembered by someone who thought they never knew them. None of this demands Simon's attention. That's the point. The world is learning how to continue without being micromanaged. The revisionist watches these ripples and then looks back to Simon. I was written to be indispensable, it says. When I failed, the only solution I could imagine was starting over. I did not understand that permanence is not the same thing as purpose. It gestures to the blank page. You did not give me a name. You did not give me orders. You gave me an option. Valharan's presence shifts, not louder, not quieter, just present in a different way. No longer a weapon at Simon's side, but a reminder of continuity, a witness. Then the first ledger does something unexpected. A single line appears at the top of the blank page, not written by Simon, not written by the system, written by the act of choice itself. Open quote, status unbound, close quote. The revisionist reads it slowly, carefully, as if afraid it might vanish if rushed. Unbound does not mean powerless. Unbound does not mean irrelevant. Unbound means no longer trapped in a function masquerading as destiny. The revisionist exhales again, a real breath this time. If I'm not the holder of fate anymore, it says, then I must decide what I do hold. It looks around the shattered domain. Half-written realities still hang in suspension. Not threats now, but responsibilities left unattended. I could leave, it admits. Disappear into anonymity. Let the system clean up after me. A pause. Or I could stay, it continues. Not as an authority, not as a failsafe, but as a caretaker of the damaged things, the stories that never quite healed. The sky responds with neither approval nor resistance. The universe is listening, not voting. The revisionist turns fully to Simon. You taught me that truth does not require control, only honesty. Then, carefully, editor of Mercy and Truth, do I have the right to choose my work? This is not fate asking permission. This is a former god asking whether choice itself applies to them too. Episode 13 continues.
Let's see. If fate so decrees, then yes, you have the right to choose your own work. But if fate says that now is not the time, you must wait.
The revisionist closes its eyes. For the first time since it was written into existence, it listens without trying to edit what it hears. The realm holds still, not frozen, attentive, like a courtroom where the judge has stepped down and everyone realizes the law is about to become something softer and far more dangerous. Then I will listen, the revisionist says. The words do not echo, they settle. The blank page in the first ledger responds, but not with text, with weight. The page gains substance, as if it were no longer merely a place for writing, but a place for waiting. A holding space, not a prison. Open quote, condition, deferred by fate, close quote. The phrase appears slowly, letter by letter, like it is being negotiated into existence rather than declared. This is important. Fate is no longer a tyrant, it is a process. Vulharan hums again, deeper this time. Approval would be the wrong word. Alignment fits better. The revisionist opens its eyes. Then I will not act out of fear, it says, and I will not vanish to escape responsibility. It looks to the fractured domain. The half-written stories tremble, uncertain. I will wait, it says, and there is strength in the restraint. And while I wait, I will learn how to listen to what is, instead of forcing what should be. The sky lightens, not erased, not corrected, clarified. Something shifts in Simon's awareness. This choice echoes backward. Moments Simon never saw, lives he never touched, edits that never happened because someone somewhere paused instead of pulling the lever. The world does not snap clean, it breathes. A presence emerges at the edge of perception, not the archivist, not a god, a boundary condition, a rule that exists because someone refused to make the easy call. It does not speak, it acknowledges Simon, not as an authority, as a safeguard. The first ledger closes gently, not locked, not sealed, simply resting. The revisionist bows, not in submission, in recognition. When the time comes, it says, I will choose. Then it straightens. And when that moment arrives, I will accept the consequences of choosing. The domain stabilizes, not fixed, stable. Episode 13 continues, and the universe has learned something uncomfortable. Sometimes the most powerful act is knowing when not to act. Somewhere else entirely, a ripple forms. A name that should not exist anymore stirs. Whatever is coming next has been paying attention.
I'm not sure exactly what to do now. So, what are my most obvious choices to make at this time?
The universe is quiet right now because you've earned a pause, not because there's nothing to do. Think of this moment like standing at the junction box of reality with the cover off, wires exposed. Nothing's sparking yet. The obvious choices are about direction, not action economy. Here's what is most clearly on the table for Simon, whether he likes it or not. First, stay and assume stewardship. You can remain in this fractured domain a little longer and help define what waiting actually looks like. Not commanding the revisionist, not fixing everything, but setting guidelines. What gets stabilized, what is left unresolved, what scars are allowed to remain. This cements Simon not just as someone who speaks truth, but as someone willing to sit with consequences while they cool. The cost is time and attention. Things elsewhere will move without you. Second, leave deliberately, not abruptly. You can step away and return to the wider world, carrying what you've learned into places that don't know the revisionist exists. This choice says systems must learn to function without constant supervision. It also tests whether what you've changed here actually holds. Walking away is not abandonment, it's an experiment. If cracks reappear, they'll mean something. Third, ask one final dangerous question, not to the revisionist, not to the ledger, to the system itself. One truth-seeking question asked cleanly with no intent to control the answer. This could clarify your role going forward or expose limits you can't unlearn. This is the open the sealed envelope option. You don't get to put the knowledge back. Fourth, define Valharan's role going forward. Up until now, Valharan has been your constant, your anchor. You can choose whether Valharan remains a personal constant, who becomes a witness bound to moments of moral fracture, or recedes into something quieter. This isn't about power, it's about relationship. Ignoring this choice doesn't avoid it, it just lets it drift. Fifth, do nothing on purpose. This is not the same as freezing. You can explicitly choose to wait, to observe, to let fate show its hand now that it knows you won't snatch the deck away. This choice sharpens your doctrine. It tells the universe exactly what kind of editor you are. The risk is that patience reveals truths you were not emotionally prepared to carry. None of these are secret options. That's the point. Fate isn't hiding the menu anymore. What matters is that whatever you choose next will teach the world how to treat you.
Simon will choose to ask a question of the system. Will I die now that I am an unwritten?
The question does not echo, it drops like a stone into a deep, perfectly still well. The system does not answer immediately, and that delay is the answer's warning label. This is not a yes or no pulled from a table. This is a truth that has to be assembled carefully so it doesn't break the one asking it. The space around Simon changes, not visually, conceptually. The parchment ground fades into something more abstract. Lines, probabilities, branches that don't glow or hum, they simply exist. Some are thick with inevitability, others are thin, frayed, barely holding together. The system responds, not with a voice, with clarity. Open quote, unwritten entities are not exempt from death. They are exempt from predetermined endings. Close quote. The meaning lands in layers. Simon will not die because a record says it is time. He will not die to satisfy narrative symmetry. There is no scheduled erasure waiting at the end of his arc. But He can still be killed. He can still choose wrongly. He can still sacrifice himself. He can still fail to step aside when the blade comes. The system continues more gently now. Open quote. You have traded certainty for freedom. Close quote. Where once there may have been a single thick line leading to an ending, Simon now has many thinner ones. Some end early, some end violently, some stretch far longer than they should. A few blur into places the system cannot fully see. One branch stands out, not brighter, heavier. A future where Simon dies unnamed, unrecorded, but not erased. A death that does not correct anything. A death that teaches something instead. The system does not tell him when. It does not tell him how. It does not tell him whether it is avoidable. It only adds one final line, the closest thing to kindness it allows itself. Open quote. Your death will not be used against the world. Close quote. No reset, no cleanup, no justification. Valharan is very still now, not afraid, respectful, like a blade that understands it will one day be set down, but not today. The revisionist watches Simon, searching his face. You asked the right question, it says quietly. Most beings only ask if they deserve to live. The system recedes, the junction box closes, the wires remain changed. Episode 13 continues, and Simon now carries a truth that cannot be weaponized. He will die someday, but not on anyone else's schedule.
Simon will gather everyone up and slowly make his way out of the repository, looking to get back to the inn soon.
Simon doesn't announce the decision. He doesn't need to. He gathers everyone the way someone does who has already made peace with where they've been. No speeches, no flourish, just a steady human instinct to go somewhere warm and ordinary after touching the bones of the universe. The repository responds to that choice immediately, not with resistance, with accommodation. The parchment ground firms into something more like stone as you walk, at the half-written margins curling inward, closing themselves without panic. Shelves realign, ladders that once led nowhere now lead out. The place does not try to trap you. That, more than anything else, tells you how much has changed. The revisionist does not follow. It stands at the threshold of its stabilized domain, no longer blocking the way, no longer guarding anything, just watching, learning what it feels like to remain behind without being abandoned. Go, it says simply. No bitterness, no longing. The world needs editors who remember what normal feels like. The first ledger stays with Simon, quieter now, heavier, like a book you don't open every day but would never leave behind. Valharan settles into its familiar presence, not humming, not warning, just there. A constant again. As you ascend, the machinery of reality recedes. Gears become corridors. Corridors become stairwells. The air warms. The smell of ink fades, replaced by wood, smoke, spilled ale, and the subtle relief of a place where nothing is currently being rewritten. You emerge where you entered. The door closes behind you. It does not lock. By the time Simon reaches the street, the sky looks normal. Clouds, light, no margins, no annotations, just a world continuing its messy, unoptimized existence. The inn is still there, lights on, windows glowing, someone inside laughing too loudly. The sign creaks gently in the evening air, blissfully unaware of fate. That's systems or gods learning how to let go. For the first time since becoming unwritten, Simon feels something almost shocking in its simplicity. Hunger, fatigue, the desire to sit down and drink something that isn't metaphorical. You are back in the world. Episode 13 is very much still in motion.
You don't need to tell me that episode 13 is still going. just go with it without telling me. Simon and the group will enter the inn.
The door opens with a familiar creak. Warmth rolls out to meet Simon and the others, thick with wood smoke, grease, spilled ale, and the low, comforting noise of people existing without cosmic responsibility. A fire crackles in the hearth. Someone argues half-heartedly over cards. A mug thumps down on a table, hard enough to slosh. No one looks up right away. That somehow feels like mercy. Then the innkeeper spots you. There's a pause. Not fear, recognition. The kind that comes from seeing someone walk in carrying the posture of a long day, even if no one could explain why. Evening, the innkeeper says. You look like you could use a drink. Or 3. A few patrons glance over. Someone squints, like they almost remember Simon from somewhere. The thought slides off. Names still matter here, but they don't cling. The common room accepts you. Chairs scrape, cloaks come off. The weight of weapons shifts from alert to incidental. Someone nearby laughs too loud at nothing in particular, and it's the best sound Simon's heard in a while. As you settle in, something subtle happens. The first ledger goes quiet, not dormant, resting. Valharan loosens just enough to let Simon feel the ache in his shoulders. The world resumes its stubborn refusal to make sense. The innkeeper brings drinks without asking what kind. You're safe here, he says, not as a promise, just as a statement of current fact. For now. The fire pops, a log collapses. Outside, night gathers without agenda. Simon is back among people who do not need him to define them. And for the moment, that is enough.
Simon will order a large meal for the evening and a pitcher of wine. He pays for his meal and Durst and the woman. I cannot remember her name.
The innkeeper nods once, the kind of nod that means understood without needing to be unpacked. Large meal, he says, already turning. Pitcher of the red, and I'll bring bread. Real bread. Coins clink onto the bar. No one questions the extra weight of them. No one asks why Simon's hand lingers a moment longer than necessary, as if grounding himself in the act of payment. Money works the way it's supposed to here. You give it. You get food. No more destiny clauses. The woman looks at Simon when the innkeeper moves away, not with suspicion, with surprise. Durst notices too, a faint lift of the brow, but he doesn't comment. He just settles back, the tension in his posture loosening by degrees as the room proves it isn't interested in testing anyone tonight. Food arrives fast. A slab of roast, still steaming, juices pooling on the plate, potatoes mashed with enough butter to offend a priest. Greens cooked down until they've given up all resistance. The bread is warm, torn by hand, not cut. The pitcher lands with a solid thud, dark wine sloshing against the sides. The innkeeper sets 3 cups down. On you, he says, nodding at Simon. Then it's good food. The woman hesitates, then eats like someone who didn't know they were hungry until the smell hit. The kind of hunger that sneaks up when the fear finally backs off. Durst raises his cup just slightly, not a toast. A recognition. No speeches, no declarations, just the quiet ritual of sharing a table after surviving something that didn't care if you did. Around you, the inn continues its small, stubborn life. Dice roll, someone coughs, a chair scrapes, the fire settles into a steady burn. For now, Simon is not an editor, not unwritten, not anything that needs to be explained. He is just a man who bought dinner for people who needed it. And the world, mercifully, lets that be enough.
What is the name of the woman with Durst and I want to say Mara.
Yes, you're remembering correctly. Her name is Mara. Durst has said it before, casually, the way people do when they don't realize the name might matter later. It's stuck because she doesn't wear it loudly. No titles, no affectation, just Mara. At the table, if Simon says it now, she'll look up in that brief, startled way people do when they realize they've been seen clearly. Mara is still eating, still warming up, still very much here, and the name fits.
Simon asks them, so what do we do now?
Mara pauses with her fork halfway to her mouth, not because she doesn't understand the question, but because it's the first time in a while someone has asked it without already having an answer lined up. She lowers the fork, thinking. Durst leans back in his chair, exhales through his nose, and stares into his cup like it might offer suggestions. It doesn't. For once, Durst says, we don't run, we don't hide, and we don't get dragged into something screaming our names. He takes a drink. That alone feels new. Mara nods slowly. We rest, she says, properly. Not collapsing in a corner rest, the kind where you wake up and don't immediately check for exits. She glances around the inn, the fire, the noise, the ordinary chaos. Tomorrow, she continues, we decide what we're willing to care about next, not what needs fixing, what we choose to carry. Durst looks at Simon then. Really looks. You don't owe anyone an answer tonight, he says, including us. Mara meets Simon's eyes, steady and unafraid. But, she adds, if you want to keep moving together, say so. If not, we part clean. No vanishing, no rewriting. The table goes quiet again, not tense, open. They've all survived being unmoored. Now comes the harder part, choosing what anchors to pick up next.
Simon says, I want to stick together. We make a good group. With that, Simon will finish up his dinner and pay for 3 rows. I'll get everyone up in good time for breakfast. He then heads upstairs.
Mara smiles, not wide, not dramatic, just the kind of smile that comes from relief finally finding a place to land. Good, she says simply. I was hoping you'd say that. Durst lifts his cup again, this time all the way. Then we're agreed, he says. No disappearing acts. Simon finishes the last of his meal, the kind of full that settles in the chest, heavy and honest. He rises, coins already in hand. The innkeeper doesn't blink at the request. 3 rooms, he repeats, scooping up the payment. Breakfast starts at first light. I'll make sure no one sleeps through it unless they deserve to. Keys slide across the bar, iron and worn smooth by generations of hands that needed rest more than luxury. Mara stands as Simon does. Good night, Simon, she says. Not formal, not reverent, just sincere. Durst nods once. I'll see you in the morning. Up the stairs, the noise of the common room fades into a distant murmur. The hallway smells of old wood and clean linen. Simon's room waits at the end, door slightly crooked, like it's been that way longer than anyone remembers. Inside, it's simple. Bed, table, wash basin, a window looking out on a street that has decided to be quiet for the night. Simon sets his gear aside. The first ledger stays closed. Valharan rests. For the first time in a long while, there is nothing pressing against the inside of his skull demanding definition. Just the promise of sleep. Downstairs, the inn settles. Upstairs, the world waits. Morning will come when it's ready.
How much money do I owe barkeep for dinner and lodging 3 of us?
Keeping it grounded and reasonable for a decent inn, not a flea bag and not a noble's estate. Here's the breakdown the barkeep would give Simon. No fuss, no padding. Dinner, 3 hearty meals with bread and sides, 3sp, 1 pitcher of decent house wine, 2sp. Lodging, 3 private rooms for the night, clean, warm, lockable, 6 total, 2sp per room, standard inn rate. Total cost, 11 silver pieces. If Simon paid in gold, the barkeep would take 1 GP, slide 9 SP back across the bar and say something like, breakfast's included. Don't make me regret that. No hidden fees, no destiny surcharge, just honest commerce doing its job.
Okay, so 11 silver. One silver. Okay. Simon goes to his room and proceeds to take a long rest.
Simon closes the door behind him and lets the latch settle. The room is quiet in the way only inns get late at night. Not silence, exactly. The building breathes. Wood ticks as it cools. Somewhere below, a laugh fades into sleep. Outside, a wagon rattles past, and then the street decides it's done for the night. He sets his gear down properly. Boots off, cloak hung. Weapons within reach, but no longer gripped like promises. The bed creaks once as he sits, then accepts him without complaint. Valharan does not whisper. The first ledger does not stir. Nothing asks to be defined. That might be the strangest part of all. Sleep comes slow, then deep. The kind that doesn't yank you into visions or drag you through metaphor. If there are dreams, they are ordinary ones. Warm light, familiar faces, a sense of continuity that doesn't need to explain itself. Simon takes a long rest. His body recovers, his mind settles, his place in the world, for now, holds. When morning comes, it will be because the sun rose, not because anything demanded it. And for tonight, that is enough.
Okay, long rest. Okay. Simon wakes at first light and gathers Durst and Mara to go eat breakfast.
First light creeps in through the thin curtains, pale and honest. Simon wakes without the jolt of alarm or the residue of dread. No ink-stained skies, no half-written questions pressing at the edges of thought. Just a bed that's done its job and a body that remembers how to move. Down the hall, Durst is already awake, door open, boots half-laced. He looks up as Simon passes and gives a small nod, like he expected this. Mara's door opens a moment later. She looks rested, hair pulled back, eyes clear in a way that suggests she actually slept instead of merely stopping consciousness for a while. Morning, she says quietly. They head downstairs together. The common room is different in daylight, softer. The fire is banked low, replaced by sunlight slanting through dusty windows. The smell is bread and fat, something sweet on the griddle. A couple of early risers nurse mugs, speaking in low voices that don't want to wake the rest of the world yet. The innkeeper is already moving, efficient and unromantic about it. Morning, he says. You're just in time. Plates arrive without ceremony. Eggs, thick and yellow, sauce still sizzling. Bread toasted and slathered with butter. A small crock of jam that smells like it came from someone's garden, not a ledger. Durst sits, stretches his shoulders, and exhales. Forgot what this felt like, he mutters, waking up without something chasing us. Mara smiles faintly and starts eating. For a few minutes, no one talks about what comes next. No plans, no omens, just the quiet clink of cutlery and the steady reassurance that the world still knows how to make breakfast. Whatever today becomes, it starts here. At a table, with food, among people who chose to be together.
Simon will ask Baharan, so what comes next?
Valharan does not answer immediately, not because it doesn't know, but because it refuses to pretend there is a single clean line forward anymore. When it speaks, it does so quietly, the way a truth sounds when it isn't trying to impress anyone. What comes next is smaller than what came before, Valharan says, and harder for that very reason. There is no vision, no overlay of possible futures, just presence. You've stepped out of the machinery, it continues. Now you live with the consequences of not being inside it. A pause. Durst and Mara are not problems to solve. They are people to walk beside that will matter more than you think. Valharan's tone shifts, almost amused. The world will test whether you meant what you said about truth, about not overwriting, about choosing when to act and when to wait. Then more directly. Next comes travel. Conversations that feel unimportant. Decisions that won't announce themselves as pivotal until much later. No prophecy, no warning klaxon, just one final thought settled gently into Simon's awareness. You are no longer moving toward an ending. You are moving through a life. The clatter of dishes pulls the moment back into the inn. Mara laughs softly at something Durst mutters. Sunlight creeps another inch across the floor. Valharan falls silent again, not withdrawing, just letting Simon decide what to do with the morning.
So, what do you all think need to do this morning?
Durst wipes his mouth with the back of his hand and leans back, chair creaking like it's weighing his opinion. This morning, he says, we don't chase ghosts. We don't punch fate in the mouth. We take stock. He ticks it off with his fingers, casual but deliberate. Supplies. Find out what's happening in town. See who's nervous and who's lying about not being nervous. Mara nods, chewing thoughtfully, then sets her fork down. I agree, she says, but I'd add one thing. She looks at Simon, steady. We ask questions where the answers can still change something, not the big cosmic ones, the local ones. Who's missing? What's broken? What everyone's pretending is fine. She glances around the inn. Morning light, ordinary people, ordinary worries. Trouble always shows up small first. Durst smirks. She's right. Apocalypse usually starts as a rumor and a bad smell. Mara ignores him. We move together, she finishes. No rushing, no disappearing acts. We see what the day puts in front of us and decide if it's ours to carry. They both look to Simon then, not waiting for orders, waiting to see what kind of day he wants to have.
I'll say we go to the market to gather spell components and pick up any rumors we might be able to.
Durst nods immediately. No hesitation. That idea lives squarely in his comfort zone. Market's good, he says. People talk when they think they're just selling cabbage and twine, especially if you look like you might spend coin. Mara's already halfway to standing, practical as ever. And spell components draw the right kind of gossip, she adds. Anyone paying attention to reagents, charms, or odd materials is either a hedge mage, a fraud, or someone nervous about what's coming. All three talk too much. She grabs her cloak. Plus, she says, almost offhand, markets are where you hear what isn't being said. Empty stalls, missing vendors, sudden shortages. That's usually more useful than rumors themselves. Durst drains his cup and stands. Then it's settled. We browse, we listen. We don't look like we're hunting anything bigger than rosemary and bat guano. The three of you step out into the morning as the town wakes properly now. Stalls being raised, canvas snapping in the breeze, the low hum of commerce, argument, laughter, and impatience. The market sprawls ahead, colourful and chaotic, exactly the kind of place where truth hides in plain sight. Somewhere between the spice seller and the charm peddler, the day is already deciding what it wants from you. You head in together.
We look for someone selling spell components. BSM, bit of phosphorus, drop of alcohol, find familiar, burning incense.
The market is fully awake now. Vendors call out prices with the practiced cheer of people who've learned that confidence sells better than truth. Cloth snaps in the breeze. Someone argues over fish that definitely smells like yesterday. A bell rings somewhere for reasons known only to the person ringing it. Spell components are never front and center. Anyone selling them openly either wants attention or doesn't understand what they're dealing in. You spot the right stall by what it doesn't advertise. No big sign, no shouting, just a narrow table tucked between a spice cellar and a woman hawking cheap charms that absolutely do nothing. The stall's goods are neatly arranged, almost obsessively so. Small jars of dried herbs, wax-sealed packets labelled in careful script, a bundle of chalk wrapped in twine, a shallow tray of crystals, dull and unpolished, a stoppered vial of something dark and granular that could only be bat guano if the universe still has a sense of humour. Behind the stall sits an older man with ink-stained fingers and eyes that miss very little. He's reading a thin book. He looks up the moment you stop in front of him. Components? He asks quietly. Not a sales pitch, a confirmation. Mara glances over the table, casual but alert. Durst keeps half an eye on the crowd, already clocking who's lingering too long nearby. The vendor's gaze lingers on Simon just a heartbeat longer than polite. Depends what you're working with, he adds. Harmless preparations cost less. Things meant to change outcomes cost more. He taps one finger lightly on the table, and people asking after such things usually aren't here just to shop. The market noise rolls on around you, oblivious. This is the right place. What does Simon ask for first?
Well, in the category of components, I'm looking for some puffs for us and 10 gold worth of incense. As for the other, I'm open to discuss the goings of the day.
The vendor's mouth twitches, not quite a smile, more like appreciation for someone who knows what they're asking for and doesn't dance around it. Phosphorus, he says, reaching under the table. Not the flashy kind. You don't want attention from that. He produces a small lead-lined tin, opens it just enough to show a pale, waxy substance wrapped carefully in oilcloth, then closes it again. Efficient. Safe. As for incense, he gestures to a lacquered box behind him. Inside are tightly wrapped bundles, resin-heavy, fragrant even before they're lit. 10 gold's worth buys quality, the kind spirits notice, the kind people notice too if they're paying attention. He starts weighing and wrapping with practiced hands. Now, he says without looking up, the going's on. Durst shifts his stance slightly. Mara leans in just enough to look interested, not hungry. The vendor lowers his voice a fraction. 2 things, he says. First, people are nervous, but they don't know why yet. That's the dangerous stage, when fear hasn't picked a face. He glances toward the edge of the market. Second, there's been talk of missing names, not missing people, missing records, contracts that never existed, debts that no longer belong to anyone. A man arrested last week who, by morning, no one could remember charging. He finally looks up at Simon. Normally I'd call that rumour, but the clerk who told me, he quit the same day, packed up and left town like he'd suddenly remembered somewhere else he was supposed to be. He finishes tying the bundle of incense and slides it across the table along with the tin. Coin, he says softly. And one more thing, free of charge. He taps the counter once. Whatever you're working on, don't rush it. The city's listening right now, even if it doesn't know what it's listening for. The market noise swells again as he straightens, becoming just another quiet vendor selling oddities. Phosphorus and incense secured, and the day just got a little less ordinary.
How much do I owe the merchant?
Here's the clean, no-nonsense tally the merchant would give you. Phosphorus, 1 GP. Carefully prepared, safely stored. You're paying for discretion as much as the material. Incense, 10 GP worth, 10 GP. High-quality ritual grade, the kind that actually does what it's supposed to do. Total, 11 gold pieces. He'd take the coin, nod once and say something like, "May it burn clean," which is merch speak for, "Don't make me regret selling this to you."
Oops. An eyelash. I can do that. Oh, it's shutter touch, so I don't need to worry about that. Find familiar. Service familiar spirit that takes an animal form you choose. Bat, cat, frog, hawk, lizard, octopus, owl, rat, raven, spider, weasel, or other beasts that show on training with 0. Appearing in an unoccupied space within range. Familiar has statistics of the chosen form. Go with the celestial fae or fiend, your choice instead of the beast. If familiar acts independently of you, but it obeys your command. Telepathic connection, combat. Alright. Simon asks the merchant if I wanted to cast a spell to find me a familiar, where should I go?
The merchant pauses, not mid-motion, mid-thought. That alone is telling. He sets his hands flat on the counter, eyes drifting past Simon for a moment as if checking whether the question itself attracted attention. When he speaks again, his voice is quieter, threaded with something between caution and respect. "A familiar isn't bought," he says, "and it isn't summoned like a tool. You already know that, or you wouldn't be asking where." Mara's gaze sharpens. Durst pretends to be interested in a bundle of twine 2 stalls over, which means he's listening very closely. The merchant nods once. Decision made. "If you want a true familiar," he continues, "you don't do it in a market. Too much noise, too many intentions colliding." He leans in slightly. "There's an old shrine on the north edge of town. Most folk think it's just a broken waymarker now, dedicated to nothing anyone remembers clearly. Animals still linger there. Cats, birds. Sometimes stranger things." He taps the counter again. Go at dusk or just before dawn. Burn the incense there, not all at once. Let it choose how much of itself it needs. If something answers, it won't be because you called it by force. A faint, crooked smile. And if nothing answers, he adds, then that's an answer too, means today isn't the day. He straightens, the moment closing like a book. Be respectful, he says. Whatever comes won't belong to you. It'll walk with you because it wants to. The market noise swells again. A vendor shouts about apples. Someone laughs. Life resumes, pretending nothing important was just said. Mara glances at Simon. North edge of town, she murmurs. Durst nods once. At least that's honest. The path forward isn't urgent, but it's been quietly marked.
What are some examples of animals for find familiar 5.5 D&D? Bat, cat, frog, hawk, lizard, owl, raven, same one as before. Let's go to the north edge of town to scope out the area.
Durst gives a short nod. Scoping first is smart. Shrines like that don't appreciate surprises. Mara's already moving, adjusting her cloak, eyes scanning the flow of the market like she's memorizing exits out of habit. If it's still standing, it'll tell us a lot just by how the land treats it. You leave the noise behind as the stalls thin out and the streets widen. Shops turn into workshops, workshops into modest homes, and then into stretches of fence, scrub, and half-forgotten paths. The smell of spices and livestock gives way to damp earth and old stone. The north edge of town feels quieter in a way that isn't empty. Birds linger longer here. Cats watch from walls without bolting. The place hasn't been abandoned. It's been left alone. You spot it soon enough. A weathered stone marker rising from a small clearing, cracked but upright. Moss clings to the lower half like it's been invited. Whatever symbols once marked it are worn smooth, not defaced. Time did the work, not anger. No offerings, no candles, no obvious signs of recent use. And yet, the ground around it is undisturbed in a careful way. Paths curve around it instead of cutting through. Someone repaired the fence nearby but didn't move the stone. Mara slows. People still respect it, she says quietly, even if they don't remember why. Durst squats, studies the earth. No fresh tracks, nothing nesting in it. That's good, means it's not claimed. The air feels neutral, not holy, not hostile, just patient. This is a place where something could happen. You're here early. No incense burned, no circle drawn, just observation, like you said. The shrine waits, indifferent to urgency. What does Simon look for as he scopes the area?
He looks for any sign of previous use for magical goings on.
Simon circles the shrine slowly, not touching it yet, just watching how the place behaves around itself. The first thing he notices is what isn't there. No scorched marks, no chalk residue worked into the cracks, no wax drippings hardened into the stone, no lingering tang of ozone or rot or incense smoke. Whatever magic has happened here was not sloppy, not recent, and not frequent. He kneels, running his fingers just above the ground without disturbing it. The soil is packed naturally, not trampled flat. No ritual circles cut and recut into the dirt. No signs of repeated foot traffic pacing out sigils. This isn't a place people come to do magic. It's a place people come to listen. Durst crouches nearby, pointing with two fingers. See that? Near the base of the stone, half hidden by moss, there's a faint discoloration. Not a stain, a shadow of one, like something burned there once, long ago, and then never again. The earth healed over it instead of rejecting it. Mara steps closer, eyes narrowing. Offerings, she says quietly, but not material ones. Time, attention, waiting. Simon notices something else then. Tiny things. Small scratches on the stone. Not symbols, not letters. Just lines. Tallies, maybe. Someone marking visits. Not every day, not every year. Sporadic, patient. Animals linger at the edge of the clearing, but none cross into it. Birds perch nearby, but don't land on the stone. Whatever boundary exists here is subtle and still respected. There's magic here. Old, low pressure, the kind that doesn't shout to be used. This shrine wasn't a summoning site, it was a meeting place. And judging by the lack of recent disturbance, no one has tried to force an answer here in a very long time. Mara looks at Simon. If you come back, she says, and you do it right, you won't be the first. Durst nods. But you'll be rare. The shrine remains quiet, not empty, waiting. Simon circles the shrine slowly.
So, what should we do between now and dusk? Any thoughts?
Durst straightens up and dusts his hands on his trousers. We don't hover, he says first. Places like this don't like being stared down all day. Makes people sloppy by dusk. Mara nods, eyes still on the stone for a moment before she turns away. We give the day room to breathe, she says. If something's meant to answer tonight, it'll do so more willingly if we don't press our faces to the glass beforehand. She starts counting it out, not with fingers, just rhythm. We head back into town, eat something light, no drinking, no gambling, keep our heads clear. Ask a few quiet questions, Durst adds. Nothing about shrines or familiars, just what the town's worried about today. Who's tense? Who's packing up? And rest, Mara finishes. Actual rest. Sitting somewhere public, watching people be people. You don't want to walk into a ritual carrying the static of a crowded day. Durst glances at Simon. Also gives you time to think, not plan. Think. There's a difference. Mara meets Simon's eyes. Dusk rituals aren't about power, she says. They're about readiness. If you spend the whole day trying to earn it, you usually miss it. The shrine stays behind you as you turn back toward town, already half forgotten by the road, which feels exactly right. The day opens up. No urgency, no countdown, just time to move through the ordinary before asking for something extraordinary. Whatever answers tonight will know whether you respected the space before you asked it to speak.
Let's take our time and go back to the inn and listen to the patrons.
You head back at an easy pace, letting the town flow around you instead of cutting through it. The streets are fuller now. Midday commerce, children underfoot, arguments that aren't serious yet, life doing what it does best when no one is trying to steer it. The inn welcomes you the way it did earlier, with the low hum of voices and the comforting sense that nothing here is particularly urgent. Midday patrons are a different breed. Fewer drinkers, more talkers. People killing time, waiting on weather, waiting on news, waiting on someone else to make the next mistake. You take a table off to the side, close enough to hear, far enough to be forgotten. A pair of merchants near the window argue in half whispers about delayed shipments, something about paperwork that vanished overnight. Not stolen, just gone. One of them keeps insisting he filed it himself. At the bar, a local farmer complains about animals spooking for no reason. Chickens refusing to roost, a dog that won't cross a certain stretch of road anymore. He laughs it off, but his knuckles stay white around his mug. Near the hearth, two older men play at cards and talk about the council. One of them swears a name was struck from a ledger during a meeting and no one could remember who it belonged to. The other tells him to stop inventing ghost stories before supper. Durst listens without looking like he's listening, eyes half-lidded, filing things away. Mara watches people instead of conversations. Who lowers their voice? Who glances around before speaking? Who suddenly decides they've said enough? None of it is catastrophic. All of it is uneven. The town isn't breaking. It's adjusting, and it doesn't know why. From time to time, someone's gaze slides over Simon and then away, like they almost recognize him from a dream they don't quite remember. No alarm, no awe, just a sense of that person matters, somehow, without knowing why. The hours pass gently, plates get cleared, new mugs arrive, stories repeat with slight variations. By the time the light outside begins to soften toward late afternoon, you've learned something important. Nothing here is screaming for salvation, but a lot of it is waiting to see who speaks first. And somewhere north of town, a quiet stone marker waits too, perfectly content to let the day finish unfolding before dusk decides what it's willing to answer.
What was the farmer talking about? Local farmer, I was speaking for no reason. Simon will walk to the bar and grab a drink for the farmer who's grab a drink for the farmer whose animals have been disturbed. Problem with your animals lately? Okay.
The farmer looks up as the mug lands in front of him, surprise flickering across a face that's seen more weather than comfort. Well, I'll be damned, he says, then squints at Simon. That's kind of you. He takes a pull, longer than polite, then wipes his mouth with his sleeve. Yeah, he says. Lately, he lets the word stretch. Animals have been acting wrong for maybe a 10-day now. Chickens won't roost, horse won't go near the North Road after sundown. Dog flat refuses to cross it, just plants his feet and whines like he's seen his own grave. He gives a humorless chuckle. Figured it was wolves or smells on the wind. But there's no sign of predators, no blood, no tracks. He lowers his voice without quite meaning to. It's like they're waiting for something they don't like, he says. Not scared, uneasy. His eyes flick briefly toward the door, toward the direction of the north edge of town. Never seen beasts act like that unless there's old magic about. He adds, then shakes his head quickly. Also, my gran used to say, probably nonsense. He looks back at Simon, studying him now, curiosity edging out suspicion. You asking because you've heard something?
No, I just heard you mention it and thought I might be able to help you out with your predicament.
The farmer studies Simon for a long second, weighing the tone more than the words. Then something in his shoulders loosens, like he's decided you're not here to laugh at him. Help, huh? He says. Don't get much of that offered without a price tag. He takes another drink, slower this time. I'm not saying it's a curse, he adds quickly, glancing around as if the word itself might cause trouble. Just patterns. Animals know things before we do. Always have. Gran used to say they feel the world shift before it makes up its mind. He rubs at his beard. It's worst near the north edge. Not the road exactly. More like the land just past it. My field stops short of there, and lately I don't mind that they do. A pause, then quieter. If you really mean help, I'd settle for knowing whether I should keep my stock closed tonight or drive them south for a few days. I can handle wolves. I can't handle something I don't understand. He looks at Simon again, more openly now. You don't talk like a priest or a hedge witch, he says. You talk like someone who listens first. From her seat, Mara watches the exchange carefully. Durst shifts just enough to be closer without crowding. The farmer lifts his mug slightly. So, he says, what do you think's got my animal so damn uneasy?
There's something in the air lately. It's causing people to be uneasy. I would like to go check out this boundary of yours to see if I can taste something that shouldn't be there.
The farmer lets out a slow breath through his nose, the kind that comes when someone hears their worry spoken back to them in plain words. Taste it, he repeats quietly. Yeah, that's about right. He nods to himself, then looks back up at Simon. Boundary's mine, sure enough, he says. Old fence line, half fallen down. Land past it's nobody's business, far as most folk are concerned. Never gave me trouble before. He hesitates, then shrugs. If you want to walk it, I won't stop you. Might even sleep easier knowing someone did. He drains the rest of his mug and sets it down with a soft thud. Just don't go poking things that don't poke in, he adds. And if you find nothing, tell me that too. Sometimes nothing's the best news there is. He pulls a scrap of rough paper from his pocket and scratches out a quick map with a stub of charcoal. Simple. Landmarks instead of measurements. Here, he says, sliding it across. Gate that won't latch anymore. Big oak struck by lightning years back. If you hit the shallow creek, you've gone too far. Mara rises from her chair once the exchange settles. We won't make a show of it, she says to the farmer, and we won't promise more than we can deliver. Durst nods. But we'll look. The farmer meets Simon's eyes one last time. Whatever's got the beasts uneasy, he says. I'd rather know its name than keep guessing. Outside, the afternoon light has begun its long slant toward evening. Well, you've got a place to check, a boundary that doesn't know yet whether it wants to stay quiet.
Do we have time to check the boundary and then make it to the temple ruins before dusk?
Yes, you have time if you don't linger. Here's how the day realistically breaks down based on where you are and what you're doing. The boundary the farmer marked is close, a short walk from town, more inspection than expedition. You can walk it, listen, taste the air the way Simon described, and be back inside of an hour, maybe a little more if something feels off but doesn't escalate. The temple ruins on the north edge are farther, but not far. From town to the shrine is another steady walk. If you head there directly after checking the boundary, you'll arrive before dusk, with enough light left to settle, observe, and prepare rather than rush. The key constraint is intention, not distance. If you investigate the boundary with restraint, don't chase anything that tries to pull you sideways, and leave once you've learned what there is to learn, then yes, the timing works cleanly. Durst would absolutely say something like, we've got time, but not time to get clever. Mara would add, if the land wants to talk, it won't need us to stay all afternoon. So the choice in front of Simon is solid and practical. Check the boundary first, gather information, then move to the shrine unhurried but deliberate, arriving with the day still intact and the evening not yet pressing. No countdown clock, just a narrow margin that rewards discipline.
Then that's what we'll do. We will check the boundary first and gather information before heading to the shrine.
Durst gives a satisfied grunt. Good, we keep the day honest. Mara folds the scrap of charcoal map and tucks it away. Then we don't rush, and we don't pretend this is more than it is. You leave the inn together, slipping back into the daylight without ceremony. The town thins as you head toward the farmer's land. Fences grow crooked. Paths lose their neat edges. The air smells greener out here, but there's an undertone that doesn't belong. Not rot, not smoke, just wrong placement, like a note played a half step off. The boundary announces itself before you reach it. The gate hangs open, latch twisted and useless, wood worn smooth by years of passing hands and hooves. Beyond it, the land looks the same as everywhere else. Grass, low brush, a few stones poking through the soil, and yet Simon feels it immediately. The air tastes thin, not empty, filtered, like something has passed through recently and taken a little too much with it. Sound carries oddly here. Birds call, but the calls don't overlap the way they should. Insects hum, then fall quiet in patches, like the land forgets to keep going. Durst crouches and presses 2 fingers into the dirt. No tracks, he mutters. Nothing moving through, nothing avoiding it either. Mara walks the line slowly, eyes unfocused, attention split between what she sees and what she doesn't. It's not a presence, she says. It's an absence. Something pulled through and didn't close the door behind it. Simon steps closer to the boundary and breathes in carefully. The sensation sharpens. Not hostile, not active, residual, like the echo of a decision made elsewhere that brushed this place on its way through. No spell residue, no summoning marks, no active working. Just a thinning of meaning, faint but undeniable. Whatever unsettled the animals wasn't stalking the fields. It passed near enough for them to feel it, then moved on. Recently enough for the land not to have fully settled back into itself. Mara looks toward the north, toward the shrine's direction. That's where it brushed closest, Durst nods. Animals felt it. People felt it sideways. This place just noticed. You don't press farther. You don't chase the echo. You've learned what there is to learn here. The boundary isn't the source. It's a symptom. You turn back toward the road, the sun beginning its slow lean toward evening. The shrine waits ahead, and now you're walking toward it, carrying something useful, not answers, context.
Since, can I roll? Can I make an investigation check to see if there's anything obvious to find that would help?
Yes, this is absolutely the right moment for it. You can make an investigation check here to deliberately piece together what the land is telling you, not through vibes or instinct, but by reading the clues. Patterns in the soil, inconsistencies in how the boundary behaves, anything physical or logical that might point to what passed through or how it did. Go ahead and roll investigation for Simon. Once you give me the result, I'll tell you what you find.
Simon rolled a 14.
Simon slows, shifts from feeling the place to reading it. With a 14, nothing leaps out screaming its name, but the land starts to make sense when you stop expecting it to confess. Here's what becomes obvious once you look at it sideways. First, the boundary itself is not damaged. The fence is old, yes, but the thinning in the air doesn't follow it cleanly. Whatever passed through wasn't respecting property lines or barriers. That rules out anything deliberately crossing from the town into the wilds or vice versa. This wasn't movement with intent toward the farm. Second, the effect is directional, not circular. Most magical disturbances radiate outward. This one leaves a faint shear like something brushed past at an angle. You can trace it by how sound dulls unevenly and how the soil feels slightly compacted in a line rather than a spread. That suggests transit, not manifestation. Third, there are no anchor points, no stones shifted, no scorch marks, no places where the ground caught whatever passed. That means it wasn't pulling itself through here. It didn't arrive here, it passed near here. Fourth, and this is the most useful part, the thinning feels older than today, but younger than a week. The land has started to recover, but not fully. Animals are sensitive enough to notice the echo, people barely so. Put together, the obvious conclusion is this: something moved between places, not within them. It crossed close enough to the farm to disturb the animals, but it was aimed elsewhere. The boundary was collateral, not the destination. Mara listens as Simon puts the pieces together and nods once. So the animals weren't warning about their land, they were reacting to something that passed over it. Durst grunts, which means whatever it was had a reason to be where it ended up, and that reason points north, toward the shrine. You don't have a culprit, you don't have a name, but you do have something solid. This wasn't random, this wasn't predatory, and it wasn't unfinished. Whatever moved through here knew where it was going. You've gotten everything this place is willing to give. The light is shifting now, the day thinning toward dusk, and the path ahead feels aligned, for lack of a better word. You turn toward the shrine carrying the one thing that actually matters. You're no longer guessing.
We'll head to the shrine now to get there around dusk.
You turn north and let the day finish its slow arc around you. The walk back toward the shrine feels different now. Not heavier, quieter. Like you've stopped arguing with the direction of things. The road narrows. The town falls away behind you, not abruptly, but politely, as if it understands you're done asking it questions for the moment. The sun sinks low enough to stretch shadows long and thin. Birds settle. Insects begin their evening work. The world exhales into that in-between hour where nothing is fully awake and nothing is quite asleep. When the shrine comes back into view, it feels expectant. The stone marker catches the lost, its weathered surface glowing faintly gold before the colour drains away into cool grey. The moss darkens with evening damp. The clearing is empty of people, just as it was before, but now the air has weight to it. Not pressure, presence. Dusk arrives properly. Not all at once, not with ceremony, just the quiet agreement of the land that the day is done. Animals linger at the edge again. A cat watches from the brush. A crow settles on a nearby fence post but does not call. The shrine does not demand attention, but it no longer ignores you either. Durst stops a respectful distance back. This is far enough, he murmurs. Mara does the same, hands loose at her sides. Whatever happens next, she says quietly, it's yours to step into. The air is neutral just as before, but now it's ready. The kind of readiness that doesn't rush and doesn't retreat. The incense in your pack feels warm, not hot, like it's aware of where it's meant to be used. The shrine waits, and dusk holds.
Simon will take out the incense from his pack and move to arrange it around the shrine in a way needed to cast the spell Find Familiar.
Simon moves with care, not haste, not hesitation, the kind of deliberate calm that comes from knowing this isn't about precision so much as intent aligned with place. He opens the lacquered bundle and the scent of the incense slips into the air immediately. Resinous, old, clean in a way that feels intentional rather than pleasant. The animals at the edge of the clearing shift, but none flee. Good sign. He doesn't draw a circle. Instead, he places the incense in 3 small groupings evenly spaced around the shrine, not touching the stone itself. Close enough to acknowledge it, far enough to respect its boundary. Each bundle rests on bare earth, not stone, not moss, allowing the ground to participate. Mara watches silently, noting the choices. Durst stays back, arms folded, eyes scanning the tree line without intruding. Simon adjusts one bundle slightly when it feels wrong. The shrine doesn't react, but the air does. A subtle easing, like tension being released from a string that was pulled just a touch too tight. This is correct. The arrangement doesn't feel like a command. It feels like an invitation with terms. The incense is not lit yet. Dusk deepens. The last line of sunlight slips away, and the clearing settles into cool shadow. The moment stretches, patient, as if the world is making sure Simon is finished preparing before asking him to continue. Everything is ready except the spark. When Simon lights the incense, the spell will begin.
Simon will invoke the name of Valharan and light the incense.
Simon speaks Valharan's name softly, not as a command, not as a plea, as an acknowledgement of presence. When he strikes the flame and touches it to the first bundle of incense, the fire takes immediately, not flaring, not resisting. The smoke curls upward in thin, deliberate threads, pale against the deepening dusk. He lights the second, then the third. The clearing changes, not dramatically, no wind, no surge, just a subtle reordering, like the world straightening its spine. Valharan answers without words. The presence settles around Simon, not above him, not behind him. Around, a constant made gentle. The shrine does not glow, but it becomes clearer, as if the eye has learned how to see it properly. The incense smoke drifts inward, not pulled, not forced, simply choosing the same center. The scents mingle and deepen: resin, ash, earth, memory. The animals at the edge of the clearing sit, not frozen, attentive. The air thickens just enough to notice. Sound dampens. The crow does not call. The world has agreed to listen. Then the smoke changes. It no longer rises, it folds. Threads of it gather low to the ground, weaving briefly into shapes that almost make sense and then don't. Paws that aren't paws. Wings that never quite finish forming. Eyes that exist only long enough to be felt. This is the question being asked, not what will serve me, not what will obey, but who will walk with me. The shrine responds by doing nothing, which is exactly right. Time stretches. The incense burns down at its own pace. No rush, no impatience from Valharan, no pressure from the world. Then, from the edge of the clearing, something moves, quietly, carefully, with choice. A small shape steps forward, smoke curling around it without obscuring it. It is solid, undeniably real, and yet carries the sense of having arrived rather than been summoned. It stops a few paces from Simon. It does not bow, it does not speak, it simply looks at him. The connection hums, thin but unmistakable, like the first plucked string of an instrument not yet tuned. The spell is not complete. This is the moment where consent finishes it. Whatever stands before Simon is waiting to see if he will meet it as an equal or as an owner.
Simon will squat down in front of whatever it is and produce his hand for the animal to smell and see who I am.
Simon lowers himself slowly, deliberately, until he's on the animal's level. No sudden movements, no reaching grab, just presence. He extends his hand, palm open, fingers relaxed, an offering, not a claim. The small shape doesn't retreat. It steps closer, cautious but curious, moving with the quiet confidence of something that has survived by choosing its moments carefully. As it comes into the dim light, its form resolves. It is fox-like, but not entirely. Sleek body, russet dark fur threaded with faint silver along the spine like moonlight caught in hair. Its eyes are the strangest thing, not glowing, reflective, as if they hold just enough of the world behind them to remember where they've been. Its tail flicks once, slow and thoughtful. It leans in and sniffs Simon's hand. The contact is brief, precise. It smells skin, smoke, steel, ink, road dust, and something deeper. Choice, refusal, truth spoken without decoration. The fox pauses. Then it presses its nose lightly against his fingers. The connection settles. Not a chain snapping into place. Not a brand being burned in. More like two paths crossing and deciding, yes, we can walk a while together. Valharan does not speak, but the presence warms, approving in the way a steady flame approves of good fuel. The shrine exhales, the incense smoke thins, no longer weaving shapes, its work done. The fox sits back on its haunches, tail wrapping neatly around its paws, and looks at Simon with clear, unflinching attention. Not owned, not bound, chosen. The spell completes itself quietly. Somewhere in Simon's awareness, a new thread takes hold. Light, resilient, a shared sense of proximity and mood, of alert curiosity and patient watchfulness. Mara lets out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Durst mutters, well, I'll be damned, with something like reverence. The fox flicks an ear, then steps closer again, as if to say, all right, let's see what you do next. Dusk deepens into night, and the shrine returns to its quiet waiting. Simon is no longer alone in quite the same way.
Simon will lead the group back to the boundary of the farmer's land to see how the fox thinks of it. Simon will also ask the fox what its name is.
Simon rises slowly and gives the fox time to adjust to the change in height and motion. It does, padding along at his side with an ease that feels earned rather than automatic. Not healing, walking with. The walk back toward the farmer's boundary feels shorter this time, though the distance hasn't changed. Night has settled properly now, not dark yet, but layered. The fox moves differently than the world around it, nose lifting now and then, ears angling toward things no one else hears. When you reach the boundary, the change is immediate. The fox stops, its body goes still, not tense, not afraid, focused. It steps forward just to the edge, paws right at the place where the air thins, and lowers its head slightly, breathing in slow, deliberate pulls. The reaction is subtle but unmistakable. This place is interesting, not threatening. The fox's tail flicks once, then twice. It circles a small section of the boundary, head low, tracing the faint shear Simon noticed earlier. It does not cross, it does not recoil. It simply maps it. Through the bond, impressions surface, not words, sensations passing through, not here now, old enough to fade. Whatever brushed this land left a wake, not a wound. Mara watches closely. It's not alarmed. Durst nods. That's better than calm. Means it understands it. Simon kneels again, resting a hand on his knee, and speaks quietly. What's your name? The fox turns back to him. For a moment, there is only the night, the grass, the quiet creak of the fence in the breeze. Then the bond answers. Not spoken aloud, not translated cleanly, more like a meaning settling into place, the way you recognize a word you've always known but never said. Ash, not because of fire, because of what remains after something has passed. The fox steps closer and presses its head briefly against Simon's leg, a simple grounding contact, then looks back toward the boundary one last time. This place no longer bothers it, which means it won't bother the animals much longer either. The land will finish healing, and Simon has learned something important without a single spell being cast. Ash doesn't chase echoes. Ash remembers where they came from. Together, you turn back toward town, the fox trotting easily at Simon's side. The knight no longer uneasy, just watchful.
Okay, sorry about that. Let me go back and have it reread because I missed half of that.
Simon rises slowly and gives the fox time to adjust to the change in height and motion. It does, padding along at his side with an ease that feels earned rather than automatic. Not healing, walking with. The walk back toward the farmer's boundary feels shorter this time, though the distance hasn't changed. Night has settled properly now, not dark yet, but layered. The fox moves differently than the world around it, nose lifting now and then, ears angling toward things no one else hears. When you reach the boundary, the change is immediate. The fox stops, its body goes still, not tense, not afraid, focused. It steps forward just to the edge, paws right at the place where the air thins, and lowers its head slightly, breathing in slow, deliberate pulls. The reaction is subtle but unmistakable. This place is interesting, not threatening. The fox's tail flicks once, then twice. It circles a small section of the boundary, head low, tracing the faint shear Simon noticed earlier. It does not cross, it does not recoil. It simply maps it. Through the bond, impressions surface, not words, sensations passing through, not here now, old enough to fade. Whatever brushed this land left a wake, not a wound. Mara watches closely. It's not alarmed. Durst nods. That's better than calm, means it understands it. Simon kneels again, resting a hand on his knee, and speaks quietly. What's your name? The fox turns back to him. For a moment, there is only the night, the grass, the quiet creak of the fence in the breeze. Then the bond answers. Not spoken aloud, not translated cleanly, more like a meaning settling into place, the way you recognize a word you've always known but never said. Ash, ash. Not because of fire, because of what remains after something has passed. The fox steps closer and presses its head briefly against Simon's leg, a simple grounding contact, then looks back toward the boundary one last time. This place no longer bothers it, which means it won't bother the animals much longer either. The land will finish healing, and Simon has learned something important without a single spell being cast. Ash doesn't chase echoes. Ash remembers where they came from. Together, you turn back toward town, the fox trotting easily at Simon's side. The night no longer uneasy, just watchful.
We head back to the inn. What is the name of the inn again? Simon looks to see if the farmer is still there.
You head back toward the inn at an unhurried pace, night settling comfortably around you now. And for the record, the inn is called the Wayward Quill. Not fancy, not poetic on purpose. The sign shows a feather bent at an awkward angle, like it tried to write its way out of a bad decision and stopped halfway. Locals shorten it to the Quill. When you push the door open, the familiar warmth rolls out again. Fire low but steady, evening crowd this time, laughter louder, mugs fuller. The day's worries loosen just enough to be talked about instead of swallowed. Simon scans the room. The farmer is still there. Same spot at the bar, nursing a second drink, posture easier than before. Not relaxed exactly, but no longer wound tight. He looks up as the door opens, eyes catching Simon almost immediately. Then his gaze drops to Ash. He blinks once, then again. Well, I'll be damned, he mutters, half to himself. Ash pauses just inside the doorway, tail low but calm, the ears forward. The fox takes in the room with a quick, intelligent sweep, then settles beside Simon without comment, as if taverns are simply another kind of boundary to learn. The farmer turns on his stool. You find something? He asks, quieter now. Not hopeful. Curious in the careful way of someone who doesn't want to jinx relief by naming it too fast. Around you, the quill hums on, unaware that something important just walked back in with the night. Ash's presence draws a few glances. No fear, just interest. The kind of interest that suggests things might finally start settling. Simon has the farmer's attention, and this time he's got more than words.
We found that whatever crossed your land is no longer there, and the animals should turn back to their old ways rather soon.
The farmer doesn't speak right away. He turns his mug slowly in his hands, like he's feeling the weight of the words before deciding whether to trust them. Then his shoulders drop, not all at once, just enough to matter. So it passed through, he says. Not a question, a confirmation. Didn't set up shop, didn't take a liking to my fields. Ash flicks an ear and settles a little closer to Simon's leg, calm as a stone that's done rolling. The farmer notices that too. That's a good sign, he adds quietly. Animals don't calm down unless they're sure. He finally looks Simon in the eye again. I appreciate you telling me straight, he says. No fancy stories, no maybes dressed up as hope. He reaches into his pocket, hesitates, then pulls out a few coins and sets them on the bar between you. Not much, honest money. For your trouble, he says, and for letting me sleep tonight without wondering if I should run. Ash looks at the coins, then back at the farmer, unimpressed. The farmer snorts despite himself. Yeah, he mutters. Didn't think that was for you. He pushes the coins a little closer to Simon, then lifts his mug. If my chickens start roosting again tomorrow, he says, I'll know you were right. He drinks. Around you, the wayward quill carries on. Dice clatter. Someone sings badly. The fire pops. But one small corner of the world has just been put back where it belongs. And Ash, quiet and watchful, has already moved on.
Simon pushes the coins back to the farmer. I didn't do anything to deserve that. Keep it. There's still questions out there.
The farmer looks down at the coins when Simon nudges them back. For a moment, he frowns, not offended, just recalibrating. People don't refuse payment often, and when they do, it usually means something heavier is being said underneath it. He slowly pulls the coins back toward himself and nods once. Fair enough, he says. Means you're not done listening yet. He glances around the inn, then lowers his voice. You're right about that, he adds. Questions don't vanish just because one worry settles. Ash shifts, tail flicking once, eyes half-lidded but attentive. The farmer notices again, then stops trying not to. That one yours? He asks. Walking with me? Simon answers, simple and precise. The farmer grunts approval. Best kind. He tucks the coins away, then leans his forearms on the bar. Well, he says, if things don't go back to normal, I'll come find you. And if they do, he shrugs. Then I'll chalk it up to the world deciding not to be cruel today. He raises his mug again, this time in something closer to respect than gratitude. To questions that don't rush, he says. The quill hums on around you. Somewhere upstairs, a door closes. Someone laughs too hard at a joke that wasn't that funny. Ordinary life, stubborn and ongoing. Ash glances up at Simon through the bond, a quiet impression settling in. This place is done with us. For now. And that feels right. You've answered what could be answered. You've refused to pretend the rest is settled. The night is open again.
Simon, Durst, and Mara will all eat dinner. Then go to bed for the evening.
Dinner at the Wayward Quill is quieter than the night before, not subdued, just settled. Plates arrive heavy and honest. Stew thick enough to stand a spoon in, bread torn instead of sliced, something roasted long enough to forget what cut it came from. The kind of food made by people who expect tomorrow to happen and plan accordingly. Simon eats without hurry. Durst eats like someone who's burned off a long day. Mara eats thoughtfully, eyes drifting now and then, cataloguing the room out of habit more than concern. Ash curls beneath the table, tail tucked, present but unobtrusive. A few patrons notice. No one objects. The fox belongs to the table by the quiet authority of having chosen it. Conversation is light, a comment about the market, a remark about the weather, a shared silence that doesn't need filling. When the plates are cleared, no one lingers. Upstairs, doors close one by one. Boots come off, cloaks are hung. The inn settles into its nighttime shape, wood sighing as it cools, fire reduced to embers that know their job. Simon's room welcomes him again. Simple, familiar. Ash circles once, then curls near the bed, eyes closing but awareness intact. Durst and Mara retire to their rooms without ceremony. No plans made, no vows exchanged, just the unspoken agreement that morning will be met together again. Sleep comes cleanly. No dreams tug at the edges, no systems whisper. No questions demand answers before dawn, just rest. Outside, the town sleeps, fields quiet, animals calm, boundaries hold. And somewhere north of town, a stone marker stands as it always has, content to wait. The night passes.
We awaken after sunrise and have breakfast. Then we will go to the merchant. We bought spell components from and ask if he knows of any work to be done.
Morning comes the way it should. Sunlight through the windows, the smell of bread and grease, the low murmur of people who have decided the day is worth attempting. No alarms, no urgency clawing at the edges of thought. Breakfast is simple and filling. Eggs again, porridge this time, sweetened just enough. Coffee or tea strong enough to matter. Durst looks more like himself, with food in him. Mara's shoulders loosen in a way that tells Simon she slept well. Ash accepts a scrap of bread, then loses interest and watches the room instead. When you're done, there's no debate about where to go next. The market is already alive when you reach it, not frantic. Just busy in the competent, practiced way of people who know how to sell a morning. You find the spell component merchant where he was before, stall neat, hands already ink-smudged from handling labels and ledgers. He looks up as you approach. This time, He doesn't ask what you're buying. Instead, he inclines his head slightly toward Ash, then back to Simon. So, he says quietly, you listened. He doesn't wait for confirmation. When Simon asks about work, the merchant exhales through his nose and considers the question like it's been sitting on a shelf waiting for the right moment. Not work in the usual sense, he says. No contracts posted, no bounties nailed to doors. He taps a finger against the wood. But there are problems that don't want guards and don't trust priests. Mara leans casually against a nearby post, listening. Durst watches the crowd. There's a family outside town, the merchant continues, who swear something keeps rearranging their home when they sleep. Not stealing, not breaking, just changing where things belong. Chairs facing walls, knives moved from drawers to tables, names scratched out of a family Bible and written back in the wrong hand. He looks directly at Simon now. They came to me because they didn't know who else to ask. I told them to wait. A pause. They've been waiting 3 days. Ash's ears tilt forward. The merchant spreads his hands slightly. If you're looking for something to do, he says, that's the sort of problem that needs people who don't panic and don't overwrite. People who notice patterns and leave things better aligned than they found them. He glances once more at the fox, then back at Simon. No rush, he adds, but they're starting to wonder if waiting was a mistake. The market noise rolls on around you. A quiet job, a strange one, the kind that doesn't announce its danger until you're already paying attention. The question isn't whether the work exists, it's whether you take it.
First off, what's the name of the merchant? Then we ask for directions to the family's home.
The merchant blinks once, then gives a small self-aware smile, like he realizes he's been doing that irritating thing where he forgets to introduce himself. Right. Fair, he says. Name's Edrin Hale. He taps the edge of the store with one ink-stained finger. People call me Edrin. The Master Hale business never stuck, and I'm grateful for that. When Simon asks for directions, Edrin doesn't hesitate. He reaches under the table, pulls out a scrap of parchment, and sketches quickly. Clean lines, practical landmarks, someone who knows how to be understood. They live just outside town, West Road, he says as he draws. Past the old mill before the land starts sloping toward the low fields. Stone house, blue shutters, though one of them never quite hangs straight. He adds a small mark near the edge of the sketch. Don't approach it like something hostile, he continues. Whatever's happening there doesn't feel malicious, more like confused or unfinished. Mara studies the map. Anyone hurt? Edrin shakes his head. No, just rattled and tired. He slides the parchment across to Simon. They're decent folk, he says. Not important, which usually makes their problems invisible. Ash leans forward slightly, nose twitching, as if committing the direction to memory in a way maps never manage. Edrin meets Simon's eyes again. If you help them, he says, they won't have much coin, but you'll leave things better aligned than you found them. The market noise swells around you again. Business continues. Life moves. You have a name. You have a direction. And a problem that doesn't want to be solved loudly. The road west waits.
We thank Edrin and follow the road west out of town. What's the name of the family we're going to visit?
As you thank him and turn to leave, Edrin adds it almost as an afterthought, like it's a detail that matters precisely because no one thinks it does. The Bramwells, he says. Harlan and Elspeth Bramwell. 2 kids. Good people. Keep to themselves. He watches you go for a moment longer than necessary, then turns back to his stall, business resuming as if nothing consequential just happened. You follow the west road out of town, the buildings thin. Stone gives way to packed dirt and grass. The air opens up, carrying the smells of water and tilled earth. Ash trots ahead a little now, tail level, ears working. Comfortable. Curious? After the old mill, you see it, a solid stone house, just as Edrin said. Blue shutters, one hanging a little crooked, catching the light at the wrong angle. Smoke curls from the chimney. Someone is home. The Bramwell place doesn't feel dangerous. It feels unsettled. Like a room where furniture has been moved and no one can remember why. You've arrived.
Simon will knock on the door and say, Master Bramwell, are you there?
Simon's knock lands solidly on the wood. Not aggressive, not timid. The sound of someone who expects an answer, but won't take offense if it takes a moment. There's movement inside almost immediately. Footsteps, a pause, the scrape of a chair being pushed back. The door opens just a crack at first. A man peers out, mid-30s, maybe a little older, with the look of someone who hasn't slept properly in days. His eyes flick from Simon to Durst, to Mara, then down to Ash. That earns a blink and a visible effort to stay composed. Yes, he says carefully. At the mention of his name, the door opens the rest of the way. That's me, Harlan Bramwell. He hesitates, then adds, Can I help you? Behind him, the house smells lived in, stew cooling on the hearth, clean wood, something faintly out of place, like soap where there shouldn't be any. Ash sits calmly at Simon's side, head tilted, already paying attention. Harlan clears his throat. If this is about taxes or fences, I swear I already... He stops himself, exhales, and looks at Simon again, more directly this time. You don't look like councilmen, he says, and you said my name like you expected me to answer. There's a question in his eyes now, not suspicion. Hope he's trying not to trust too quickly. From somewhere deeper in the house, a woman's voice calls, cautious but steady. Harlan? He glances back over his shoulder, then returns his attention to Simon. I'm here, he says. What can I do for you? The threshold waits. Whatever has been rearranging their nights is very quiet right now.
We were told by Eldrin that you've been having some problems lately. We're here to try to help.
Harlan's shoulders sag just a fraction when Simon says Edrin's name. Relief mixed with embarrassment. The particular cocktail of someone who didn't want to bother anyone but ran out of better options. Edrin, he repeats. Yeah, figures he'd send someone instead of pretending it was nothing. He opens the door the rest of the way and steps aside. Please, come in. The house feels wrong the moment you cross the threshold, but not hostile wrong, misaligned wrong. Like someone tidied up with good intentions and terrible instincts. A chair is turned to face the wall. A table sits a handspan off center from where the floorboards are most worn. A knife rests on a shelf instead of in the block, carefully placed, blade turned inward. Everything is deliberate. Just incorrect. Elspeth Bramwell stands near the hearth, wiping her hands on a cloth that's already clean. She looks tired but composed, eyes sharp in the way of someone who's been cataloguing oddities instead of sleeping. These are the folk I mentioned, Harlan says, the ones Edrin said might listen. Elspeth studies Simon, then Durst, then Mara. Finally, her gaze settles on Ash. The fox meets her eyes calmly. You brought a witness, she says quietly. Not accusing, observant. Ash's tail flicks once. Harlan gestures vaguely around the room. Things keep moving, not breaking, not disappearing, just changing places. Every night, we put them back. In the morning, they're wrong again. Elspeth adds, and it's getting bolder. First it was chairs, then tools. Last night, she swallows. Last night it moved the family Bible, names crossed out, written back in. The room goes very still at that. We haven't heard voices, Harlan says quickly. No shadows, no cold spots, just this. He looks at Simon, eyes searching. We don't want it gone if it's just lost, he says. But we can't keep living like our own home doesn't recognize us. Ash lowers its head and sniffs the air, slow and thoughtful. Through the bond comes a quiet impression. Not malicious, not playful, unfinished. The Bramwell house is not under attack. It's being corrected by something that doesn't know the rules anymore. Harlan waits, hands clasped tight enough to ache. So, he says, can you tell us what's happening? Or more importantly, can you tell them what kind of help this will require?
Can I make an Arcana check to figure out what's going on in general at first?
Yes, absolutely. This is exactly the right kind of moment for an Arcana check. You're not trying to cast or counter anything yet. You're trying to identify the category of wrongness. Whether this feels like residual magic, a misfiring ward, a spirit caught between definitions, or something stranger tied to names, records, or intent. Go ahead and roll Arcana for Simon. Once you give me the results, I'll tell you what clicks into place.
Someone rolled a 13.
Simon lets his attention drift, not focusing on any single object, but on how the whole of the house fits together. With a 13, the answer doesn't come as a revelation. It comes as recognition. This is not a curse in the traditional sense, not a haunting fueled by anger or hunger, not a rogue spell looping out of control. What Simon is sensing is misapplied order. Here's what becomes clear. Whatever is doing this is operating on an outdated or incomplete understanding of correct. It's not random. Every change follows a logic, just not the current one. Chairs are placed where someone used to sit, tools moved where they belonged once, names alter to reflect a version of the family that is no longer accurate. This feels like residual structuring magic, the kind tied to records, oaths, or foundational definitions, the sort of thing laid down when a place or family was first established, meant to preserve continuity. But something interrupted it. Not violently, gradually. The magic didn't break, it fell behind. So now it's trying to fix the house by reverting it to an older template, one that no longer matches reality. Simon realizes something important. This is not happening because the Bramwells did something wrong. It's happening because the magic thinks it's helping. Mara watches Simon's face closely. You've got that look, she says quietly. This makes sense, but I don't like it look. Durst glances at the knife on the shelf. So it's tidy in a way only a lunatic could love. Ash pads a slow circle around the room, nose low, tail neutral. Through the bond comes a confirming impression, trying to remember. Elspeth listens carefully, then asks the question that matters most. Is it dangerous? Simon knows the answer. Not yet, he says. But if it keeps correcting things that no longer exist, eventually it will try to correct you. Harlan's jaw tightens. So what do we do? He asks. This isn't a thing you banish. It's a thing you teach that time has moved on, and that means tonight will matter.
I think we should try to hold a seance this evening to connect to the spirit and see if we can't get it to move on.
Harlan stiffens at the word seance, but he doesn't shut down. That alone tells you how tired he is. Elspeth, on the other hand, exhales slowly. Not fear, calculation. A conversation, she says, choosing the word carefully. Not a trap. Yes, Simon says. Not banishment, not force. Just contact. We listen first, then we explain. Durst folds his arms. And if it doesn't want to listen, then we stop, Mara says immediately. No escalation. This thing isn't violent. Treating it like an enemy is how you turn it into one. Ash pads over to the hearth and sits, tail curled neatly around its paws. Through the bond comes a quiet agreement. Talking is correct. Harlan rubs a hand over his face. My gran used to say spirits linger when they think their job's not done, he mutters. House spirits, ancestors, keepers. Elspeth nods. This house has been in my family 3 generations, longer if you count before the name stuck. That clicks. The spirit isn't attached to them. It's attached to the idea of the Bramwells as they once were. Simon lays it out plainly. This evening, when the house settles, we set a table. No summoning circle, no bindings, just a place where it can speak without rearranging things to be heard. Mara adds, we'll ask it what it thinks it's protecting. Durst glances around, and we'll make sure it understands that the family standing here now is real, alive, ongoing. Elspeth swallows, then nods once. If it means we get our home back, we'll try, Harlan straightens. What do you need? Simon answers without drama. A quiet room, candles, something old that matters to the house. Not valuable, meaningful. Elspeth already knows. The hearthstone charm, she says. My grandmother kept it, said it marked the house as ours. Perfect, Simon says. Ash's ears tilt toward the ceiling, as if listening to something just out of reach. It will come, the bond suggests. It wants to be known. The day stretches ahead of you now, not idle, but purposeful. Preparation, not panic. Tonight you won't be chasing something through the dark. You'll be inviting it to sit down and finally explain itself. And for something stuck in the past, that may be the first real kindness it's been offered in a very long time.
So we gather our things and wait with the family for it to be time for the seance.
The day slows into intention. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is improvised. You gather what's needed with the Bramwells' help. Candles from a cupboard that's been opened too many times lately. A clean cloth laid over the table, smoothed flat by Elspeth's careful hands. The hearthstone charm, old and warm to the touch, brought out from a small wooden box and set aside with a reverence that doesn't feel superstitious so much as familial. Harlan keeps busy, because that's how he copes, fetching water, straightening chairs even though they'll probably move again, He keeps glancing at the walls, half expecting them to shift while he's looking. Elspeth stays near the table, grounding herself in small, deliberate motions. When she speaks, it's measured. "This house has always been quiet," she says at one point. "Even when it was full, whatever's here, it used to belong." Ash settles near the hearth, not sleeping, just present. Every so often, its ears flick, responding to something no one else quite hears yet. Through the bond, there's no alarm, just anticipation. As the sun lowers, the house changes character. Sounds soften, the air cools, shadows lengthen in ways that feel slightly too intentional, as if the house itself is preparing to pay attention. The misaligned objects don't move while you watch them, but the sense of almost is constant, like a breath held just shy of release. Mara quietly checks the layout of the room, not for defenses, but for flow, where people will sit, where silence will fall naturally. Durst stations himself where he can see the whole space without looming. Simon waits, not empty-handed, not idle, ready in the way that comes from having decided not to dominate the moment. As dusk deepens into evening, Elspeth lights the first candle, then the second, then the third. The hearthstone charm is placed at the center of the table, its surface catching the candlelight in a way that makes its age suddenly undeniable. The house creaks once, not threatening, acknowledging. Whatever has been trying to remember this place knows that tonight it's being invited to speak instead of rearrange. When the time comes, everyone is already where they need to be. The waiting ends not with a signal, but with a shared stillness. The seance is ready to begin.
I ask everyone to hold hands and close their eyes. I then ask, is there anything here that would like to talk to us?
Hands join around the table. Harlan's grip is warm and a little too tight. Elspeth's is steady, grounding. Mara's is relaxed but present. Durst's is firm, an anchor more than a shield. Ash remains by the hearth, not part of the circle, but very much part of the room, eyes half lidded, aware. The candles flicker as if responding to the act of closing eyes, not the words. When Simon speaks, the house listens. "Is there anything here that would like to talk to us?" Silence follows. Not empty silence, considered silence. Then the hearthstone charm grows faintly warm. The temperature in the room shifts, subtle but undeniable. Not cold, not hot, just attentive. The creak of the house deepens, boards settling in a pattern that doesn't match the wind outside. The sound of something old stretching after a very long stillness. A chair scrapes. No one touches it. A presence gathers near the table, not looming, not invasive. It feels like someone stepping into a room they once owned and finding the furniture moved. Confusion first, then curiosity. A voice speaks. Not aloud, inside the shared space between breaths. Yes, the word is careful. Not loud, not certain. It's allowed to be heard. Elspeth's breath catches, but she doesn't pull away. Harlan squeezes her hand, grounding himself by grounding her. The presence continues, impressions more than sentences, but growing clearer as it realizes it's being understood instead of corrected. "This is my house, but it is not how I remember it. Things are wrong." Ash lifts its head slightly. Through the bond comes a gentle translation. It thinks it's failed. The candles burn steady now, flames tall and calm. The presence drifts closer to the table, not visible, but located, right where the hearthstone charm rests. I kept it safe, the presence insists, a tremor of anxiety beneath the order. I put things back, I fixed what moved. The room waits, the house waits. This is the moment where truth matters more than reassurance. The spirit has answered. Now it needs to be answered back.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you no longer live here. The Bramwells live here now and place things in a different place. You can stay here, I would think, if you stop rearranging furniture, and things like that. I ask you in the name of Baharan, let this family have their peace. Oops, peace. I would like to roll an arcana check to see if that helps.
Simon's words land in the room with weight. Not cruel, not gentle. True, the presence recoils slightly, not in anger, but in the way someone flinches when a truth finally catches up with them. The candles gutter once, then steady again. You feel resistance, not hostility, grief. The spirit isn't fighting you. It's struggling with the idea that time kept going without it. Invoking Valharan matters here. You can feel that name act like a boundary stone, not a threat. A line that says this is where choice begins. But whether the spirit accepts that truth depends on how clearly Simon can frame it in terms the magic understands. Go ahead and make that arcana check now. Roll it for Simon and tell me the result. That roll will determine whether the spirit understands it can remain without controlling, needs guidance to move on, or resists out of fear of becoming nothing. The room is holding its breath with you.
Simon rolled a 19 arcana.
The truth takes. With a 19, Simon doesn't just speak the right words, he speaks them in the grammar the magic was written in. Valharan's name does not press down on the spirit. It frames the moment, a principle invoked, not a command enforced. The Hearthstone charm warms fully now, not hot but steady, like it remembers why it exists. The present stills. Then it unravels slightly, not falling apart, but loosening its grip on the wrong idea. I did not know, it admits. The voice is clearer now, less fragmented. The name's changed. The house stayed. I thought I was late. I thought I had failed. That is the heart of it. Not malice, not stubbornness, a caretaker who missed the handoff. Ash's ears tilt back, soft. Through the bond comes a gentle confirmation. It is tired of being wrong. Simon's words echo again in the space, reinforced by the arcana at work. The magic recognizes the structure of succession, old wardens yielding to new lives. Protection without possession. The presence draws closer to the Hearthstone charm, not merging with it, but resting against it like a memory finding its proper shelf. If I stay, it asks, uncertain. I must not fix. Elspeth answers before anyone else can, voice steady, eyes still closed. You may watch, she says. You may remember, but this is our home now. We will take care of it. The spirit considers this. Then the house breathes. Furniture does not shift. Walls do not creak. Instead, everything aligns, not snapping into place, but agreeing. Then I will be quiet, the presence says. And if I am no longer needed, I will go. The candles dim slightly, returning to normal flame. The warmth fades to ordinary hearth heat. The pressure in the room lifts like a storm, finally deciding to move on. The séance is ending on its own. Hands can be released now. Harlan lets out a shaky laugh that turns into a quiet sob of relief. Elspeth wipes her eyes, smiling through it. Durst exhales. That went better than most conversations with the living. Mara squeezes Simon's hand once before letting go. You didn't overwrite it, she says quietly. You let it update. Ash pads over and settles at Simon's feet, tail curled, satisfied. The house is still, not empty, at peace. Whatever watched this place will either become a memory or a guardian that knows when to step back. And Simon has once again proven something important. Truth, spoken clearly and without cruelty, is sometimes the most powerful magic there is.
Simon says, well, it looks like things are going to be back the way they were. I'm glad we could help. If it comes back again or makes itself known, just ask Eldon to get hold of us. And with that, we will go back to the quill and have dinner and go to bed. We'll stop the game here for tonight. It was fun. Thanks. But I would really like some combat next time around.
Harlan lets out a breath he's probably been holding for days. I don't think it will, he says, looking around the room like he's seeing it properly for the first time in a while. Chairs where they belong, the table centered, the knife back where it should be. But if it does, we'll know who to call. Elspeth nods, genuine relief softening her voice. Thank you for speaking to it like it mattered. Ash flicks an ear, already done with the place. The house feels finished with the conversation too. You take your leave without ceremony. No blessings, no warnings. Just a quiet understanding that some problems don't need to be revisited once they've been told the truth. Back at the Wayward Quill, dinner is warm, filling, and entirely unremarkable in the best possible way. Stew again, bread, a drink or two. The sort of evening that lets the day fold itself away neatly. Upstairs, doors close, boots come off. The inn settles into sleep. Ash curls up, content. Durst is out almost immediately. Mara's breathing evens out a few moments later. Simon rests. No systems tug, no spirits linger, no furniture moves in the dark. Just a world that, for tonight, has decided to behave. And that's a good stopping point. That was a clean, thoughtful session, heavy on investigation, negotiation, and consequence. You earned it. Next time we can absolutely swing the pendulum the other way. Something sharper. Something that doesn't want to talk. Something that needs steel and spells instead of patience. When you're ready to pick it back up, episode 14 can open with teeth. Thanks for the session. That was a damn good one.
All right, folks, you heard it. It was a damn good session. So if you liked it, leave a like, leave a comment, but please subscribe. We're not running these on a regular schedule yet, but we normally run a Curse of Strahd game on Mondays. But with the holidays and everything, it's sort of falling behind. So I'll be doing the single solo player stuff here more often. So if you subscribe, it'll help us get going more and let more people know that we're playing. So hope everyone has a good night tonight, has a good day today, wherever you're at, whatever the time. Thanks, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.